For coming. I know you came here to see the Chartered Accountants report. That should be up in a few minutes. Don't worry. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Councilor Reid.
For 7.3 on our agenda this evening, I'm part of the committee.
Thank you. Councilor Reid. Any other declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move right on. We do have a couple bursary checks to give out today. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. These are for a couple of young gentlemen who played hockey and they went to the, well, come on up here, boys. Come up to the front here and we got to go on. I'll meet you over here in a few minutes. Don't worry. We have Nathan Fanner and Alex Eby that are getting checks today. We have that one too. All right, we got another one here. It's always great when you get an extra check handed out. Ryder? Yep. All right, so Nathan and Alex and Ryder, come around. Gotcha. Why are we? Oh. Pick where? Where did you? Forest? You want to tell them? So great. So we have Silver Indian here in Drayton and Mapleton. These are coming up of the Silver Stick. We're giving some checks from help pay for some of the things that they had to pay for. Well, the parents from they didn't pay for it all, but they get a check and someone now will take it from them. Nathan, we have a check for you. And Alex and Ryder. Thank you very much. Congratulations. There's Allie there, so everyone look at Allie over here. Thanks, guys. Congratulations. I scoot around and we'll get to the next item on here. And this is you know what, this is a very, it's a pleasure for me to do this one. This is the Senior of the Year Award. And tonight we are pleased to award Township of Mapleton Senior of the Year to Jim DeBach. And Jim, when I think of someone that embodies the spirit, values, and selfless commitment to the community, that's who I think of. I think of you. You and your family, you moved here in 1978, and Jim has been an avid contributor to the community ever since. There's not enough time or words this evening to speak to his community service these past 45 plus years. We'll just stop there at 45, Jim, and be a contributor, yeah. As an Alma Optimist Club member, Jim has been an integral part of seeing many amazing projects come to life. And I can tell you, if you don't see Jim at an Optimist event, it's not because he's not there. He might be in the back somewhere, but Jim's usually at all the Optimist events. And Jim even at one event taught Marianne and I how to the proper use of plunger tossing. You know, that's very good, Jim. I really appreciate that. It came in handy when I went into a tournament and lost. Yeah, thank you for that. Coach Jim, as he's lovingly known, has been coaching T-ball every Wednesday in Alma for over 40 years. And adults who were once T-ballers, well, he taught them, he taught their kids, and he's taught the grandkids. So he's got a few generations of T-ballers under his belt, and he's still doing it. A teacher for 36 years that you know, I think you still miss teaching, don't you, Jim? There you go. Jim has been a mentor to children for much of his adult life. And when there is a need for a school crossing guard, Jim stepped up. And if you are going by Alma Public School on Mondays, You'll see Jim on County Road 17. We actually can't miss Jim on County Road 17 when he's a school crossing guard. He's always there telling a story, and even more so listens to the children and hears their stories. And when I say you can't miss Jim, he's sort of like that wacky waving inflatable, because every car that comes by, Jim is giving them a wave and saying hello to everybody that comes by. So that's just Jim. And he always has time to chat with anyone about anything. And let me tell you, if he's got something on his mind, he doesn't mind sharing that. And him and I have had many great conversations. He's caring and compassionate individual who is always listening ear for advice, a hug when you need one, and who embodies all there is about being a wonderful human being. Please join me in congratulating this year's recipient of the Senior of Year Award for the Township of Mapleton, Jim DeBach.
Wow. Thank you very much. They use the rivers and that for time. And we have to cross this river. So, you know, it's learn to help you. But then as you advance across that river, you get a little deeper as you go. So we have to be careful when you step. But to go forward, you have to leave that to move to another rock. And that's again, it's taking life. Then you look back at your footprint and you see, what is this footprint? Did I leave something worthwhile? Did I shoot? Then as you go further, you leave flat rock to go to another rock. There's always this hint of, are you getting fast? Or are you just taking some? Are you giving it to your community? Are you being that person that you hope to be? So you move to another rock, now it's getting deeper. And you need help sometimes too, because you don't want to drown. You keep going and going. And then all of a sudden you develop new kinds of compassion towards other people. And your compassion is not just within your neighborhood, and it's not within your county. But your compassion then goes beyond that into other countries, to people you don't even know. And you're willing to help them. You'll move on to the other level. You're going to help other people in continents you will never go to. And that's what the journey is about. It begins in adolescence, and hopefully it continues for your entire life. And I think that's why I'm here to encourage other people to take that step, to go to the step. And if the Jim that I know, he would say thank you for this recognition. It's not that. The real truth would say, there are still other stones to cut. And if I could quote Woodstock, what was it? He said, Joni Mitchell said, if we're really going to do it, we're really going to achieve this, if we're going to go to the next stone, what we have to do is, we have to do is change the bonds up there into butterflies then.
Back, because the rich photos and you can't just get a speed to run away.
Okay. Yeah, right. Here. This is good. Yes.
Grab on. There you go. We have this gift for you as well, my friend.
Thank you very much.
There we go. Fantastic. Thank you, Jim. A great recipient from Mapleton this year. Thank you. Now everyone can leave that doesn't want to be here anymore that came up for Jim. And now the rest of you want to hear about the taxes and all the rest of the things coming up. Let's do confirmation of minutes. Resolution here moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that the minutes of the Township Mapleton Council meeting held on May 23rd, 2023 be confirmed as circulated agenda package. Any questions or alterations? All in favor? That's carried. Having a good time out in the hallway. We don't have any matters arising from the minutes, nor matters under the Planning Act, or matters arising. We have a delegation today from Dale Franklin from the Palmerston District Hospital Foundation. Dale, if you don't mind taking the podium behind, pushing the button, and away you go. We're welcome, Dale. And we are dying to hear about the great program that took place and how we could help you further.
Excellent, and it stays on. Good evening, Mayor Davidson, members of Mapleton Council and staff. Thank you so much for your time this evening as we bring an update on our recent Starlight Gala held in Mapleton at the PMD Arena Complex. My name is Dale Franklin, as Greg told you, and I work as the Development Officer of the Palmerston and District Hospital Foundation. Our most recent gala was our 20th iteration of this fundraiser, begun in 2001 by a group of Palmerston Hospital staff members and handed off the following year to the Palmerston and District Hospital Foundation. Since then, it has grown to be the flagship fundraiser for the foundation and has become the social event of the year for many. This year, we welcomed 630 people to Mapleton and raised well over $300,000 for the equipment needs of the Palmerston Hospital. This is a record profit for our fundraiser. We were able to successfully purchase the chemistry analyzer for the lab, and the balance of the funds raised will go towards purchasing equipment on our capital equipment list for this year, as the needs are many in any hospital. I would like to introduce the members of our team who were able to join us tonight. First, I'd like to introduce Earl Campbell, who's the foundation president. Maybe give a wave as I say your name. Mary Lou Brown was the Gala Leadership Chair this year, and she's actually a very special leadership chair for our 20th iteration of the Gala. She was one of the original staff members who helped to start this fundraiser. In the front row, we have Yvonne Sheik, who looks after our tickets. We have Ron Ellis, also in the front, who looks after our entertainment very well. We have Teresa Campbell, who is in charge of our silent auction area. And we have Kathy Stacia, who's in charge of our live auction area. And all of these people, along with a few other people who were not able to attend, our decorating chair and our food chair, and our silent auction and our business solicitation chairs, combine their efforts every year to make this an amazing fundraiser for our organization. Of note at this year's gala, though, we unveiled our plans to launch a campaign that will be of interest to all of our local residents. Last year, the Palmerston and District Hospital Foundation offered support to the Board of Directors of North Wellington Healthcare in its bid to receive approval for an MRI machine. And in January of 2023, we found out that we were successful in receiving the approval to bring MRI technology to Palmerston. This is a huge win for our local catchment area, as we are right in the middle of one of the most underserviced regions in our province for this important diagnostic tool. Receiving approval means that we are eligible to have the program at Palmerston, but it also means that we will be engaging in our largest fundraising campaign ever to date in order to raise the approximately $6 to $8 million that we will need to bring this service to our community. We are grateful to our local municipalities for all of their support in the past, especially through the in-kind support of our gala. We couldn't do that without the support of our municipal councils and staff who assist us in that endeavor. We look forward to engaging with all of you to help our MRI campaign be successful. We know that we will be able to count on our local municipalities to see the huge benefit of an MRI in our community and move forward in partnership with the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Oh, wow. The amount of money raised at the gala, over $300,000, quite a feat, absolutely quite a feat. And thank you to the volunteers, you know, Earl and Mary Lou and Yvonne and Ron and Teresa and Kathy. Thank you so much on behalf of council and the township. Just, yeah. MRI. Wow, that's a great feat as well to get that approval. And I know that the $6 to $8 million, big number, but we can do it. If we all work together, we can do it. And whatever you need from the township, we will help support you. Absolutely, 100%. Because we want this for all of our communities. Questions, comments? Get me off the hook here, somebody else? Go ahead.
So I enjoyed the gala this year a lot. I really enjoyed the band actually more than normal. So they were fantastic. Back to the MRI, you introduced, there's two gentlemen chairing up that initiative. Remind me what their names were again.
So the co-chairs for our MRI campaign committee were introduced at Gala. Dan Hill is a former board member from our foundation, served in many roles, the treasurer, the president, past president. And Mark Leslie is a current director on the foundation. And those gentlemen are co-chairing the MRI committee. We're starting to build that committee, and we are looking for representation from all across Mapleton and Minto, as well as some of the catchment areas that are on the fringe of our area. We will actually be offering this service beyond our usual catchment area, and so we would like representation on our committee from those other areas as well.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at the gala. Certainly wanted to be there, but running for the FCM board took me away from that. So I did hear some great things about it, and man, I wish I was there. Anyway, it's fun. It's a fun time. No other questions or comments at this point? Thank you so much, Dale, for coming, and for everybody else for coming as well. I have a resolution here moved by Councillor Tamblin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township Midland Council receive information to delegation of Palmerston District Hospital Foundation, Dale Franklin, Development Officer, regarding an update on fundraising through the recent gala event and the MRI project. All in favor? Great, thank you. Thank you all for coming. All right, so we thank you very much to the Palmerston District Hospital Foundation. And next up, we have the Wellington County 4-H, Lynn. Sorry. We got Krista Bates and Lynn Fluelling. Right, go to up to the podium, be great, thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to have Wellington County 4-H come. Just to introduce ourselves, Krista Bates is our president of the County Association, and she started as a youth director and then joined when she graduated from a 4-H member and has been a 4-H leader in the county for 10 years now. And I've been involved with 4-H for many, many years. I've been a life skills leader here in Mapleton for 40 years. And I joined the association as a treasurer 5 years ago. And 4-H has always been close to my heart, but just to let everyone know, anyone that doesn't know what 4-H is, it's an organization of leaders building leaders, youth between the age of 6 to 21 under the direction of trained screen volunteers, pledge their head, heart, health, and hands as members of community-based clubs. With projects encompassing agriculture, food, health, recreation, and life skills, members put the 4-H motto, learn to do by doing, into practice to learn self-confidence, communication, leadership skills, problem solving, and goal setting. All this while having fun and making new friends. A club project consists of 6 meetings where the members learned about a specific topic. And 4-H has been a successful 100+ year history in developing competence, connection, character, and caring within rural and urban youth. It is the one youth group that also teaches meeting skills. So every meeting that we run, we have our president and secretary and press reporter, and they learn how those skills work. And the members also have opportunities to attend different conferences and activities throughout the province. And there's even country exchanges when they're part of the program. And they also, there's many scholarships that they can actually apply for before they're finished the program. And Wellington County is one of the many associations under 4-H Ontario. And during 2022, the membership in Wellington County was 250 members with 30 leaders participating in 22 different projects. And actually, I pulled up another number from our membership chair the other day. We have 170, actually, I want to change that to 184 members because every day we seem to get a few more members coming in. And we have 36 members that are actually Mapleton Township members. So that is 20% of our membership actually belongs to Mapleton out of the whole county. And why we're here tonight, I was told that other groups actually are able to use facilities for free. So this is what we were here. So we run a number of events, which the group typically need a large venue for. Our big one is our annual beef dinner and auction. And it's our main fundraiser, which rely on to raise money to fund a number of activities and awards for our members and leaders throughout the year. And included in our funded events are the annual judging competition, awards nights, and we've been working on a day geared for just our life skills members so they can come together the same as our livestock ones do at local fairs. So we're currently working on that and we're hoping to do that this fall yet. And we also have funding awards for members and leaders, and we help costs for any of our members attending camps and conferences. And with the rising cost of everything, and specifically hall rentals, when we do our fundraiser, that takes a large chunk out just to rent the hall. So it would be nice to be able to have a place maybe that we don't have to pay as much to, and we can use that as part of our money for the members. So we're asking whether we can get on the list for the Mapleton Township halls, and if we could, growing our youth is so important for our future, and it's all about youth as far as 4-H is concerned. So we'd just like you to consider putting us on the list.
Thank you, Lynn. Questions from council then? To the 4-H group? Go ahead, Amanda.
Through you, Mayor, sorry. So you're talking when renting the halls, this is a county-wide dinner that you guys do. That's the large event you do. So that's everywhere from, like, that encompasses all these members, the 250?
Sorry. Yes, it encompasses all our members from the south end of Wellington County to our north end. Even we have folks coming from Listowel and other counties that actually come too, so. But it's,
We tend to like to have our events in the Mapleton region because it's central to Wellington. And then everybody coming from the north and south, they seem to come and support us because it is central then. And they're not driving all the, like, Palmerston isn't driving all the way to Guelph or Puss Lynch, and they're not driving all the way north. So we like to keep it in Mapleton, so it's that central for everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have your resolution that Township Mapleton Council received for information a delegation of Wellington County 4-H Association, Lynn Llewellyn, regarding rental fee of Mapleton and Township Halls. Any questions, comments about this? Councilor Reed?
I'm just wondering if maybe we should be considering on a local level, Mapleton wise, renting the hall for being part of this list, but when it's a county-wide initiative, that we do charge a fee, whether it be a discounted fee or a set fee, just because it is such a county-wide production that they're putting on. And it is a fundraiser, I understand that, where they're doing dinners and auctions and they are bringing in some like ticket fees and things. I'm just wondering if that would be a better initiative than doing all the rentals for free. Like, I know there are smaller groups that they'll need to rent the hall for as well. It's just a thought.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilor Martin?
Yeah, I think, I mean, nobody has to debate the merits of 4-H, right? It's all, it's well known. It's a wonderful program. I think the only, my memory serves me right, the only, group on that list is in fact the group that was just here, the Hospital Gala Foundation, right? Everyone else is Mapleton centric, Drayton, Moorfield, Alma groups that are part of that. And it is, you know, it's essentially, you know, it still costs money to have a facility, and so it's essentially to be on the list, it's, you know, tax-based, subsidized, right? So I'd certainly be open to, you know, a discussion about, you know, a discounted rate. I probably wouldn't support having Wellington 4-H be added to the list exactly, but if we can figure something out to help them out with the beef dinner, I think that would be something that would interest me.
Councilor Ottens?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think the reason for the list is the groups on it serve the community in some way. The discount on the hall is because they're raising money to give back into the community. If my memory serves, that was kind of the basis for the list. So typically it was service clubs, and then there was sports teams and things too. This kind of, it's a tough one because you can say churches then all fall into the same category because they're also nonprofits, right? And then they want to have a fundraising dinner and they're doing it for the church, but they're also contributing to society by helping to raise good youth too. So I find this one a little bit of a thinker. So I agree with the counselors at the other end of the curve there that I think a discount might be something we have to add into our list, that maybe we have a list of discounted groups and not a full freebie.
Thank you. Council recalls it wasn't that long ago that we added in May the Conestoga Lodge. And they're also money they raise goes elsewhere besides Township of Maple. So I just want to remind council of that. And we did add them to the list back in May. Any other thoughts? Any motions? The motion on the floor right now is just to receive this for information. If you want anything else, if you want to do a certain motion, then put it on the floor. Go ahead.
I think I'd like to motion through you, Mayor, that we do, if the local club was doing a meeting and needed a space, that would be sufficient use of space for a free meeting. But if it's a countywide initiative like this is, that we would be charging a rate of some kind.
Thank you. So your motion is for the 4-H for local programming. Maybe add it to the list or discount it. Was it discounted you want it or for local programming? Add it to the list. Okay. Okay. So the motion on the floor from Councilor Reed is that the 4-H be added to the list for local programming in the community. Do we have a second for that? Councilor Ottens, thank you. Then we'll have a discussion about that. Is any further discussion on that? Council, questions, go ahead.
This question would be to the leaders. Is there a defined hierarchy there that it's like Mapleton 4-H and then County 4-H or separate groups?
Yes, it does. We start with basically 4-H Canada, and then it goes down to 4-H Ontario, and then within Ontario, there's all the different counties. And then under the counties, we have many different, basically throughout the townships, and then it goes into the life skills versus the livestock clubs too, so. Well, well, there's only one that is within Mapleton, and that's the one that Kathy Dobbin and I lead, and it's a life skills one. But we do have members from from Mapleton Township that is in the beef and the dairy, and a number of them actually are going down to Erin and doing poultry club and an arts club down there too. So the members travel across the county.
So just stay there, please, Kathy. So Lynn, sorry. So the program you do is local,
Right, correct.
and how often do you use the facilities for that program?
We don't use the facilities because we basically do it out of our homes, or I have been doing it out of the ag office at the fairgrounds this last time, but we're looking at, from a county perspective, because we do have a lot of Mapleton members that are
Thank you.
here.
Yep, understand. Further comments? Or the amendment?
Okay. Yeah, just to continue what everyone was saying, but just I would support like a discount on a fundraising activity within the township that calls in other people, but like you said, not free use of the hall.
Okay. So right now, motion on the floor is Mr. Clerk.
At the moment, the motion is that 4-H be added to Mapleton's list for local group programming, e.g. skills.
The council. So after the discussion that we just had with Lynn, do we want to amend that at all? as was just mentioned, that they really don't use our facilities for local programming. It's other amendment, or we could, would you like to withdraw? You can do the withdrawal as well. Mr. Barrett.
Through your worship, would it be helpful? We are looking at updating our policy manual, which of course this is a major part of the policy. Would it be helpful if we just maybe table the motion and have staff come back with an updated policy that could address free services, discounted services, and then perhaps that updated policy would cover not just 4-H, but every other user group that has an ask force.
Thank you. So the original motion was a township able to council receive for information to delegation for information. And then we had a second motion put on the floor. That 4-H be added to Mapleton list. Would you like to continue with that motion, or would you like to withdraw that motion?
I think it's a hard call. I'd say if they think there'd be a need to use a space, it would be good for them to still be on there, but if we're gonna be relooking at everything anyways, I think it's better to just.
So I got withdrawal of the motion then. Is that good? Councilor Ottens? Okay, so withdraw the motion. So we'll go back to the original and staff will investigate. Any further questions or comments? All in favor then? That's carried. Thank you both, and staff will investigate and we'll get back to you. Thank you. Next up, we have Alma Optimist Club, Mr. Bruce Whale. Welcome, Bruce. Please take the podium. You're on the right behind you. Yeah. You've never been here. I know, Bruce. Do you want me to, vacate my seat for a few minutes for you? You've been here before.
Wendy Watson is our secretary treasurer, and she's the one that can go through this information and pull out just about anything you want. So if there are questions, I'm going to ask Wendy to answer those. So first of all, thanks very much, Mayor Davidson and council and staff for finally, not that we've been trying for a long time because we've been kind of recovering from COVID like everybody else, but we had asked a while ago if there's a chance to meet with staff or come to council, and Mr. Barron suggested we come to council, and then everything's maybe discussed or have a chance to ask questions. So thank you for making that possible before we get too far through this year. We've tried to provide you with most of the information that you probably want to look at, but I'm going to just touch on a few things more probably for staff that aren't as familiar with some of the background. I think most council will be, but the Alma Optimist Club, first of all, was one of the partners when the Alma Hall was built in 2010, 2011. I think our first function was January 2011. And the opportunity came up to get both provincial and federal grants for community projects at that time. And this was one that they were ready to go. The club was considering selling the current facility they had because it was going to take a lot of repair and maintenance to meet the requirements that were going to be in place. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to partner with the township to provide the third that was provided locally for that building. So, and with that, we offered, and the part of the arrangement was that we would manage the hall, and there would also be a management committee above that involving council and staff, and also some local people that functioned for the first 5 to 8 years, but now, well, again, with COVID, things kind of all fell apart, but we did go through and redo that agreement just a year, I think, before COVID, and made a few changes to it. But we are still really proud to be able to operate that hall. It's our, I guess we're happy that we can provide the people in the community with a first-class venue for meetings and functions that people in the area use, and it's used extensively. If a lot of weddings, it's not primary use of the hall, but it is a very nice location for weddings. So it does take up a lot of, the weddings take up a lot of our weekends in the wedding season, and sometimes the odd one outside of the regular May to October, November wedding season. Our role as a committee has been to operate the hall. We do the openings and closings. We look after maintenance. We do have a person that we pay for cleaning, but quite often our volunteer members also help to clean the hall whenever, after bigger functions or if there's maintenance that has to be done. We also look after the gardens around the hall. Fortunately, we were helped out just before COVID started, when the township agreed to take over looking after the snow removal in the parking lot, simply because insurance rates went so high, we couldn't find smaller operators that were willing to even move the snow in the parking lot. So that was a real help for us. As I said, community usage is, we don't have good recent statistics because things are still getting back to a normal, but we do have quite a few bookings, and I think the ones through 2023 up to the ones we have deposits for were included in the document that we circulated. So I'm going to leave it at that, and if there are questions on the financial statements, or you want more information between Wendy and myself, we'll certainly try to answer those questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Questions, comments? From what you read? From what you heard? Amanda's out, she can't talk, she's out. Nothing? Sorry, Martin.
I think well, first of all, former mayor hasn't forgot the 7-minute rule on the delegations. Apparently that was nice and quick. For me, the financial statements were pretty straightforward. Your club was affected just like everyone through the pandemic. I guess what we are also here to talk about are kind of the outstanding utilities that the township has fronted. So I'd just be curious in knowing kind of more what the proposal is and if there's been conversations or what your desires are.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, we don't really have a proposal. Our club is willing to do what we can our intention is to pay them all off. It may take a little while because we have other issues that we've had to take care of in the meantime, but we did agree to operate the hall. Unfortunately, it's hard to operate when all the public buildings in the community were closed because of COVID. And so there were expenses that we had no source of revenue other than pulling that out of the reserves that we had in the Optimist Club itself. So it was just our thought that if some of that funding that was available through the provincial and federal funds that were distributed for maintaining and operating public facilities during COVID were still available, we'd certainly appreciate any help that we could get from the municipality to help us kind of get out of that hole and start over again. And Wendy can maybe, if you want more detail, I think it's mostly hydro and gas. There might be a few telephone bills, but some of those we had paid ourselves too. Yeah, any other comments, Wendy?
No, I think it's all the invitation unless you have questions. You want me to go deep?
Go ahead, Councilor Ottens.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Looking at your profit and loss statements, if I go back to 18 to November 2018 to 2019, this is pre-COVID when the rentals were fairly normal, I guess we could say. You make about $10,000 income. Do you think maybe your rental fees, are the rental fees high enough? 10,000 is a nice amount, but I'm just wondering, you're probably putting in a lot of hours. Income is 63,000 and the expense is 47 mine, and so it's a lot of hours for $10,000. So I wonder if maybe given the expenses of hydro and all that's gone up, have your rental fees gone up as well to account for that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Marlene. We've tried to keep our rates similar to the other facilities in the township. It wasn't our intention to undercut or to charge excessively more than what other facilities were. And 2018 was probably the best year we had. Most years we were within, Wendy can confirm this, $0 to $5,000 kind of at a maximum. So we were glad to see that. But one of the big things there was we didn't have all of the snow removal expenses in that year too. And that was becoming a much bigger part of our cost to operate. So any other comments on the?
No, the snow removal was a big one. It was in the last 2 years that we paid it. It was $12,000 per year and $10,000 higher. So that really ate our profits. But we have every 2 years taken up our rates to try and remain competitive. And I still think we are competitive. And 2024, we look again. That's our year 2 for adjusting. Because we do want to pay our bills.
Thank you. Councilor Martin.
John's gonna pat me on the back here when I say that, inflationary pressures are probably gonna keep driving up your costs on the haul anyway, right? With gas and hydro and stuff. So, if 10,000 is one of your good years, and it's almost 26,000 kind of outstanding, I don't know. That's awkward for a club to be staring down a 2.5 year good years deficit to kind of claw your way back to even. So, I'm not sure when an appropriate time would be to make a motion to consider around this. But I think that's something we can entertain.
Yeah, we can do that motion after the delegation is done. Any other comments or questions? I know Amanda has all kinds, but shout out still. Sorry, the agreement was last changed when, did you say? Between the township and the Optimist? Was it 2019 you said, 2018?
It was either 18 or 19. It was over the issue of assessment. Impact was quite concerned that the municipality didn't seem to be having access or using the hall as much as they wanted to see if it was a public building, or that the other option was we could take over the hall completely and then pay the property taxes on it. But it's not a small facility, so you start adding property tax and we'd be spending more time raising money just to run the hall than doing youth projects in the community. So it wasn't really an option for us.
So forgive me again, and I don't know the whole total history on this. Is it common that the agreement is renewed approximately every 5 years? Do we have that discussion about every 5 years about the agreement? And because we're doing the snow removal now, and we weren't doing it before, and I don't know how that all works in that agreement. But do we relook at that together every 5 years?
Again, originally it was an agreement for 10 years, renewable for an additional 10. And when it was revised, I don't remember if we set a time period, but we are responsible for meeting with council or presenting to council our budget, or if there are any capital items that look like they should be dealt with. Now, more of that is taken care of since Lucas Rogerson, up until a couple of months ago, was doing a lot of the recording work and the construction or the capital upgrades and things that had to be done. And so he was keeping a handle on that much better than we maybe were before. Well, it was a new building. You didn't have a lot of capital things that we had to look at, but I would certainly be willing to meet every year or every 5 years, whatever would be suitable with council. I mean, to review the contract, and also, I think annually we want to be able to present a budget and let you know where our expenses have been and whether we have any money there, what's happening.
The reason I'm asking is because of the deficit. I know it's because of COVID and you're trying to climb yourself out of a hole, but if there's a way that we could have that discussion and that the township maybe take over more of some, like we do the snow removal, anything else we can do, it might be beneficial for the Optimist Club to have that discussion with our staff and look at a renewal and what can we do to help each other out.
Which I'm sure our committee would certainly be open to that.
Yeah, we want to make sure everybody succeeds here, and that's, anything we can do to make sure it's success, that's what we're looking for. And if it's a burden, then we want to make sure we can help out to reduce that burden somehow. Yes, Mr. Finance Director.
Your worship, I just wanted to indicate that the change that was made in 2019 was that they went from a rental agreement to a license agreement. In other words, the property, it belongs to us, and license agreement is their privileges of using our property. That can be reviewed at any time.
There you go. Thank you. So maybe what we'll do is have that discussion, Bruce, and with the staff and see what we can do to help out and maybe do some kind of work that and maybe forgive that extra amount of money you're still owing and try to figure out how to get you out of that hole.
That's, we'd appreciate that discussion. And again, our expectations are not that you're going to take care of the whole thing, but we certainly would be willing to share it. I think our finances are in reasonable shape now, and what we have bookings for, there's nothing big that we see in the near future, but we can't help with that payment or those payments, but we just want you to understand why we can't just bring.
Totally understand. I know you're talking about
and have it off the
looking for
books.
some funding elsewhere, and that's part of the discussion we could have. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, perfect. So the motion here is moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township Mapleton Council receive for information a delegation of Alma Optimist Club, Bruce Whale and Wendy Watson, regarding an update report for the Alma Hall. Any further thoughts, questions? Councillor Martin.
I would like to amend the motion to include a proposal that we clear this debt by using some of our 3-year surplus that we have that we're going to discuss later in the agenda. But I think it could be, I mean, things like this are unforeseen. It's a building within the township that we everyone can enjoy, and I think 25,800 is a worthwhile contribution considering the surplus we had from our recent 3-year budget.
So just to be clear, you want the motion is for township to completely clear it, or do you want township staff to work with the Alma Optimist to clear that debt?
Both. So I would suggest that we clear the debt and that the township staff sit down with the Optimist Group and just see how we can maybe better partner for the operating costs moving forward. Sorry, Larry, that was wordy.
Yeah, we're working, we'll wordsmith it for you, so it actually looks good and sounds good. So there is a motion on the floor then to amend the current motion. so that the township will clear the debt of the Alma Optimus Club, and that the Alma Optimus Club and the township work together for the future of the club or agreement. Yeah. To discuss the agreement. Okay. I'm sure the clerk will have something better than I have. So we have a motion to amend. I need a seconder for that. Councilor Rotten seconds that motion to amend. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Councilor Rotten.
Yeah, so just to clarify, this debt is based on related rentals, so this isn't going to be an ongoing issue. Because we want it to be financially sustainable rather than a constant hole. So that's fine. A simple nod was good.
Yeah. So the motion to amend, it's, any other questions or comments on it? Go ahead, Councilor.
My understanding was it was the utility costs that the township covered kind of in advance because of the pandemic when there was no revenue coming in, so.
All right. So there's no other comments or questions on this. They'll call the question on the motion to amend, and then we'll call the question on the entire motion. Mr. Clerk, do you have the second part of that motion? Do you want to read what we're going to be voting on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, the motion is to clear the debt using the 2022 financial surplus, and further to work with the ACC to discuss the agreement going forward.
ACC.
Alma Community Center.
Okay. No, just want to make sure. It's Canada. Yeah. Okay. Everybody understands then that motion? So this is a motion to amend. So we're voting on that motion to amend first. All in favor? It's carried. Now that is amended, the main motion. Any comments, questions on the entire motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the entire motion altogether. All in favor? That's carried. And Mr. Clerk, I'll get you to rewrite all this later and I'll sign that one off after you finish it all up. Thank you. Thank you very much to our delegation. The next up, we have, here's what we, everyone came for, but they all left because it's getting late. RLB Chartered Professional Accountant. So Murray, welcome Murray, back again. Please. It's we're looking forward to hearing our financial statements and how great our staff did.
There we go. Yeah, apparently I drove everybody away, so I apologize. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to present the audited financial statements. What I'm going to do, there was two documents that should be included in your report. One of them is the PowerPoint presentation that we have on screen. Second one is the financial statements themselves. PowerPoint covers off the main statements and with the graphs and so on that we present on an annual basis anyways. That's kind of all included within there. So I'll propose to walk through the PowerPoint, leave the financial statements, but if there's any questions on either one or the other, I'm happy to answer those. In the interest of keeping it as timely as possible. I wasn't aware, by the way, of the 7-minute delegation time. I have a hard time sticking to that when I'm presenting financial statements, but I'll try and keep it as quick as possible anyways.
Well, Councilor Martin, he likes 7 minutes, but it's actual 10. Okay.
Okay.
And it's at my discretion if you can go longer. So just
Okay.
give me a wink and a nod and I'll let you say, go ahead.
If you cut me off at 10, I'll understand completely. All right. So just a brief agenda. So we have a bit of information on the audit process itself, talk very briefly about the audit report and then get into the financial statements. And that's where we'll have some of those key graphs that we present each year. And then just finally next steps in order to kind of complete the audit process and get the signed financial statements done. So we can move to the next slide, please. In terms of our audit overview, our materiality for our audit is $530,000. That would be consistent with the communication that we provided to council in the fall. As we do every year, we sent a letter highlighting the materiality as well as some of the key planning elements going into our audit that we then kind of undertook over the course of the last few months. That materiality level is what allows us to sign up for our audit report. But basically it's kind of a conceptual number that basically kind of high level strategic decisions at the council or senior management level would be impacting the strategy and major decisions of the organization at that level. In terms of our testing, we obviously use much lower thresholds and sometimes random tests, which may be, $5 or $20 transactions. So it's not kind of an indication of the testing that we do, but that's kind of conceptually what that means. In terms of the communication to council that we provided back in the fall, there was no significant changes to our audit plan that were presented within that communication letter. So no changes to the procedures, risks that we assessed as part of that communication. Happy to report that there were no significant internal control deficiencies to communicate. Our management letter is a clean one, so indicating that there's nothing that we felt should be brought to the attention of council in terms of any recommendations for internal controls. Everything that we did in terms of our audit process came to the conclusion that the controls are sound and reasonable for your financial reporting. In terms of independence, it's important as auditors to be independent of our audit clients. That allows us to do an unbiased audit. And so I can report that we have no concerns from that standpoint. We have no vested interest in your financial results. And as a result, we can complete our audit in an unbiased manner. In terms of entries, there were two adjusting entries coming out of our audit, just relatively kind of straightforward things. One minor adjustment to investment interest, and one of them being to record construction holdbacks on some of the work in process at the end of the year. We did have 3 unadjusted differences. These are insignificant amounts that we don't adjust as a result of our audit. Basically small timing differences at the year-end date that don't have a material impact. And so those were left unrecorded. In the next slide, we reference our audit report. It is included in the financial statements themselves. So it's a 2-page report, which I won't kind of get into. But basically, it is a clean audit opinion. We are confirming that as a result of our audit, that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So the next slide just talks about the statement of financial position. This is where we highlight, or the financial statements present the financial assets, liabilities, and then non-financial assets for the township. The net of all of those things being the accumulated surplus on the year. And you will see that on the next slide. So this is pretty small on screen. I apologize. Hopefully council has copies in front of them. They can also see, but I will just talk very briefly. You can see the cash position of the municipality down by about $1.8 million year over year. That's largely because of the capital expenditures incurred in the year. So there's about $8.8 million capital expenditures in the year. That's a higher than normal expenditure that you would have in a given year, most notably related to the Drayton Water Tower, which made up about half of that total. But significant capital expenditures resulted in that decrease in cash. The accounts payable line stands out as well. You can see that amount is up by about $1.7 million. That relates primarily to construction holdback. So some of the work that was in process at the end of the year resulted in significantly greater holdbacks at the end of this year versus last year. The deferred revenue line also stands out in liabilities. That balance is down by about almost $2 million. Basically, as a result of all that capital work, you drew down some of the reserve funds and most notably your development charges, and we'll see that on a subsequent slide. Down at the bottom, very quickly, we have the non-financial assets. Tangible capital assets is where all that money is going into your infrastructure, and you can see that the tangible capital assets have increased by about $5.6 million net of amortization. So that's the $8.8 million invested net of the amortization, which was about 3.1 or 3.2. So then we get on to some of the graphs that we have. If you could advance the slide. Cash and cash equivalents. This shows the percentage of your annual cash outflow. So all the money that the municipality spends in the year, how much of it you hold in cash at the end of the year. That balance is not surprisingly down. In prior years, you were anywhere from 115 to 146% of your annual cash outflows held in cash. This year it's down to about 97. That's only because of all the cash outflows related to capital. So Not surprisingly, that balance is down. It's still a very significant cash position to be in. Obviously, most of that cash is held in your reserves and reserve funds set aside for future purposes. Next slide is taxes receivable. As we share, we provide this information relative to other municipalities. We try to normalize for that based on tax revenue. In this case, total tax levied, because you are also raising funds for the county and school boards, of course. Your taxes receivable are about 5.8% of that total. The average for other municipalities is 6.8. So your tax receivable continues to be in a favorable financial position relative to our other municipalities, and certainly well below what the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing considers to be kind of getting into the risk, moderate to high risk categories. Anything less than 10, they would consider to be low risk. You're at 5.8, so you're certainly in a really strong position from that standpoint. The next slide is your tangible capital assets as a percentage of total tax revenue. So again, trying to normalize for the size of municipalities, we compare some of these metrics versus total tax revenue, because obviously we have much larger municipalities, much smaller municipalities. And so to try and kind of normalize for that, we take some of these stats as a percentage of total tax revenue. In your case, you can see the green line is the Township of Mapleton. 4 out of 5 years, you've been spending more on capital asset additions relative to your tax base than other municipalities. So I think that's a strong indication that you're doing what you can to stay on top of your infrastructure needs. And most notably, as I said, this year with that 8.8 million spent, you can see that line jumps up to almost 100% of what you raised in taxes you spent. Obviously, that's not where it's funding from, but that's just a means of comparison. So this graph shows capital asset additions versus budget and versus amortization. The budget numbers will kind of vary, and you'll see some swings based on projects that carry forward from one year to the next based on what's completed when. But looking at the blue line and the yellow line in each year, you can see that in each of the 5 years, your capital asset additions have exceeded amortization. Again, a strong indication that you're doing what you can to stay on top of your infrastructure needs. And this just shows funding sources. So as with most municipalities, most of the funding for your capital is coming out of reserves and reserve funds. Those are the 2 shades of green that we can see here. The orange is coming out of your taxes. So that's the portion each year that is coming out from taxes raised in the current year. And then purple are capital grants. And you can see that you've had more success with funding some of your capital from capital grants this year than in prior years, but sometimes those grants coming from other levels of municipalities, other levels of government are a bit meager, if I can put it that way. Next slide. So the statement of operations is the next statement of the financial statements. It shows the revenues and expenses as compared to the prior year, as well as compared to budget. And so if we just jump to the next slide, again, very small on this slide. You can see in total that revenues are up by about $3 million year over year. Few of the changes are coming, as I mentioned, some of the grants that were received, increasing the Ontario funding line in particular, up by about 400,000. But again, as I mentioned, you did draw a fair amount out of reserves and reserve funds, and about 2.65 million was coming out of the obligatory reserve funds that are shown here in revenue. So that's a reason for the increase in revenues. On the expense side, expenses are up as well. This is not capital, this is operating expenses. The reason for some of the increases, things like fuel and utilities costs, as we heard in the previous presentation, some of those things are up fairly substantially. Materials costs will change from year to year, but the inflationary changes over the last several years have had a bit of an effect there. Nevertheless, the municipality did have a surplus on the year of about $4.7 million, up from 3.2 the year before. So next slide is where we show expenditures by department. Not surprisingly, transportation services being about 45% of your total operating expenses, but the rest of the departments fairly evenly spread amongst the other top 4 anyways, between 11 and 14%. If we go to the next slide, this is where we just show the 5-year comparison. You can see that transportation service is actually down as a percentage of the total from what it had been in previous years, as you're spending more on things like environmental services. So the next statement is the statement of changes in net financial assets. This shows the change in your financial assets. So backing out the activity from your capital asset and other non-financial asset activity. And you can see that your net financial assets decreased by about 891,000. So the $4.7 million surplus, basically that and more went into your infrastructure. So your financial assets did decrease somewhat, about 900,000 from the prior year. So next statement is the statement of cash flows, just showing the change in your cash position. Kind of similar to the last one in terms of the impact. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that overall your cash position decreased by about 700,000, fairly comparable to the change in your net financial assets for the same reason. So generating positive cash from your operating activities of about 7.5 million. That's up slightly from the year before. But then with all of those capital purchases and tangible capital asset additions, that then drew down your cash position by that $8.8 million. Net of all those is a decrease in cash of about 700,000, as I said. We do have a schedule of accumulated surplus. So if we go to the next slide, please. This shows the total breakout of the $65 million accumulated surplus. Most of that is your investment in capital assets, which has increased as a result of the additions that I mentioned. But down below that, we have reserves and reserve funds. You can see they are down somewhat. The discretionary reserve funds down by about 800,000 and your reserves down by about 900,000. That's part of the funding for the capital that I mentioned. The remainder of the funding, as I mentioned earlier, some of it was capital grants, some of it was taxes, but some of it's coming from deferred revenue that we'll see on a subsequent slide. And so this is the obligatory reserve funds. They're not included in the reserve funds that I just showed you. They are shown as a liability. And so if we go on to the next slide, this is your deferred revenue. You can see it's down by about $1.9 million, most notably the development charges. So you spent basically everything that was in your development charges reserve fund on your infrastructure needs in this year, in the year. So as a result, that deferred revenue is down to about 1.4. So this graph is the schedule of reserves and reserve funds as a percentage of total revenue. This combines the obligatory reserve funds and the discretionary as well as your reserves. So this is all of those reserves and reserve funds collectively. And you can see that it does dip down to just below the average of our other municipalities, but it's still in the same ballpark. So considering that you went through and did as much in terms of capital asset additions as you did in the year, you still have well-funded reserves and reserve funds. I always caution when I say that, though, I don't make predictions as to how much you need in those reserve funds. I'm not an engineer. I'm not looking forward. I'm looking back as an accountant. Your engineers and your management team would be in a better position to project how much you need for future infrastructure needs. This is just a comment on where your reserves and reserve funds are right now relative to other municipalities in the area. So lastly, next steps with this presentation to council, we would hope that council would see fit to approve the financial statements at today's meeting. With that, subject to that happening, then we will get management to sign the representation letter that allows us to sign off on our audited financial statements or our audit report, which is presented here in draft. And then that will allow for the submission of the financial information return, which is your required reporting to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So that is my presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Not bad, just about 15 minutes. Good.
I tried to keep it as quick as I could.
You did a good job, all right. Questions then from council? Amanda, you can speak at this one. Okay. No questions, no comments. It's a really good report, well laid out. Thank you very much, Murray.
Great, thanks.
A resolution here moved by Councillor Tamblin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township Mapleton Council receive for information the presentation by RLB Chartered Professional Accountants Murray Short regarding the Township of Mapleton's 2022 financial statements. Questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, Mary. The next and last delegation we have is Jeff Boozman. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Jeff Buseman. I'm with Van Ernst Surveying and I'm representing the property owner, Simeon Ballman over here, and then Eli Shirk is the gentleman that will be building his new facilities. We were here at the council last October talking about there is Mr. Ballman's property in Wallenstein. He's actually got 2 parcels and looking at a zone change for dealing with both parcels. And at that meeting, we were asked to provide additional information, and we did provide that additional information back in March. Included a number of plans and some answers to some of the questions that were presented. Just kind of recap a little bit of the whole big picture of it all. It's an odd shaped parcel. There's 2 parcels right by where the G2G trail meets the road. And a nice big piece of paper here to help in the presentation. Mr. Bowman has owned the front parcel for a while, and 3 years ago, he purchased the back one. One of the things that he did was there was a fairly large chicken barn on the property. So 3 years ago, he tore that down, but he also tore down the building that had his horses at that time. Since he still owned that building, the front one, he's put his horses in the front building for now. So his plan is to build a manufacturing type facility with a power room and then also a new horse barn. The other buildings, accessory buildings will remain. This is primarily a workshop and then a building that will be used for the horse buggies. This is a building has come down to basically foundations right now, but will be used for garden storage and storage of some personal stuff. So these 3 buildings are related to the dwelling. Okay. One of the things that had come across in all of this is that the current driveway crosses over the G2G trail lands. And so the idea was to do a lot line adjustment from the property in the front. So a piece would be added from that small one in the front to the one in the back to allow better movement of trucks and vehicles. So wouldn't have to use the G2G trail lands. So that was a severance application made to the County of Wellington. It's been approved subject to conditions. Okay. There have been some questions or comments about what is going to be done at this facility. And we provided in that letter back in March an idea of the different types of manufacturing that's being considered. It's not like he wants to start that business right away, but he wants to build that facility now. There's been some questions about the horse barn. We did provide some drawings. I'm trust that you have that for the horse barn. Horse barn is laid out fundamentally. There's 4 stalls in the middle with a stairwell to go upstairs where the hay is stored. And then that's about the center third of the building. The other third of the building is for manure storage. And the remaining third of the building is for Sunday guests when they come over, a place to store the horses. So I asked this evening and they suggested maybe a typical 8-12 horses would be in that front building at that time. So one small thing to also clarify is that the second floor of the barn will be used for hay storage, and its footprint is about 2/3 of that of the first floor. It'll be a hip structured style building, and I think that's in your drawings as well. And if you do need some drawings, I have some. I guess I thought about it a little bit more just before this meeting, and that when Mr. Bowman purchased the property, he had that large chicken barn, he had that 1 horse barn. And if I look at those, he gave me an idea of those dimensions, and I worked that out to 665 square meters of those 2 particular buildings that he tore down. to convert to square feet, you multiply by 10 roughly. Okay, if you want to think about it that way. We're proposing new buildings of 691 square meters. So a little bit bigger than what was there before. We've been asked about, why does the horse barn need to be so big? And they're telling me that's kind of what they would like with the 4 stalls, manure storage, and area for their guests when they come on a Sunday for socializing. The planning report has been written. There's really 2 applications here, one for the front property and one for the back property. The one for the front, a suggested bylaw has been written, and I ask council to consider that and approve that. There is some suggestions to maybe think about it a little bit more in terms of number of horses or whatever should be allowed in that facility. There is no, the second bylaw, there is no suggested bylaw provided in the report at this time. We do seek your guidance as to what you're hoping to see here. I mean, this property is part of Wallenstein, part of the Mennonite community, which you're all well aware of, and the unique nature of this area, that it's a real mix of family residence, horse and buggy usage, manufacturing, agriculture right there. You're all aware of that, and that's the character of it. So it's a challenge to always find the right planning mix of how to set that up. And it looks like the committees, townships have done many of these before and has done well. We're asking for your support. They would really like these facilities as they are proposed, and be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the project. And also these gentlemen here can help answer things that I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions to the delegation from council? And just to remind council, on your page 6, the 2 planning and development, page 6, 9.61 and 9.62. That's the 2 properties that is being spoken about here. Councilor Martin.
I'm struggling with a little bit, even from the application in October till today, is just the vagueness that still remains around what the use will be. It talks about, proposed or types of products being considered. And there's some examples that are listed. But there's a big difference between marbles and machine products and manure spreaders, right? Like there's a whole lot of, so I don't, do we actually have like a business plan or an idea of what, if we're building all this infrastructure and the capital costs that go with it? I would assume that there's an idea of what type of business is going to operate out of there.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been asking the same question, and this is the answer that they've been giving me. Can you add, can either Simeon or Eli, can you add to what your expectations are? I mean, I found the examples that they gave me helpful. I remember visiting a few places in the area to understand what's made and what's sold in some of the facilities here. But I would say, can you add to what kind of manufacturing you plan to do here? Do you mind coming here? Okay.
So sorry, what you're suggesting then is that what pictured that we have of nuts and bolts and other parts, that's what you're planning on building or making? Yeah. Is that your plan? Okay. That answer your question, Councilor Martin? Or you need a little more information? Go ahead.
Where we've run into issues in the past where, a second story on an accessory building for a youth group turns into a dog kennel over time, right? Like it quickly. So to not, I just Jeff has laid out, the contentions and, no painting, business hours, those types of things. But for the life of me, I can't understand why you don't know exactly what you're gonna manufacture or what your business is gonna be exactly coming out of there. Cause I mean, I'd certainly love to have all that nailed down before I start with the change on zoning. So that I'm just struggling because normally the details are quite important on this type of thing. Maybe it's not, maybe we don't care. But usually it's of interest on these types of applications. And I'm certainly not trying to put Jeff on the spot. It's just like, it just seems unusually vague.
And maybe I should go on a little further that we knew a zone change is required. And because we're having the zone change, there was an element of saying, let's put this on with it. Mr. Bowman is working at one facility now where he does this kind of work. And so his hope is to set up his own business at his own place. And so, yeah, he doesn't have a business plan. And I can appreciate exactly what you're saying. But he doesn't have a business plan at this moment. It's really necessary. We're doing the zone change. This is kind of what I have in mind. I don't know exactly what I'm making, but we would like to take advantage of this whole process to allow for this building at this time. So I think that's pretty fair.
Thank you. I see where you're going with this, Council Martin. It's a little clunky and not nailed down. Other questions? Councillor Ottens?
Thank you. Through you. I'm just wondering about the horse barn size. Is it typical within your community that you provide a barn large enough for visiting horses? I understand having for your own, but that doesn't seem typical either. Like that's a pretty large barn just for everyday use within proximity to a community. Having it for your own needs, I understand, but why do you have to have it for your guests on a regular basis?
Eli, do you want to answer that one?
So you're looking for a place to put the horses when they come visit. And that's something that most of the farms would have, a place for visitors. Is yours that you're planning larger than most? Or is it about the same? Like it's like 12, was it 12? 10? I can't remember the number.
So yeah, I don't have the best drawing. Do you folks receive drawings of the suggested?
Yeah, we have. Yeah. Yeah.
He's basically, if I could describe the building well, there's 4 pens. The pens or stalls are 10 foot by 15 for their personal horses. Okay, and then that's in the middle third of the building. The other third is manure storage. So I mean, I guess there could be an idea to cut down the size of the building, have manure stored outside, but this is what they prefer. And then the other is more of an open area for all 12 or 8 horses to stay in that remaining third.
Thank you for clarification. Further questions, comments to the delegation? Seeing none. All right, thank you for clarifications. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that Township Mapleton Council received information, a delegation of Van Harten surveying, Jeff Boozman, regarding additional information concerning zoning applications ZB 2022-09 and ZBA 2022-12 Bowman. Any comments, questions? All in favor? That's carried. Now we'll move on to item number 8, which is Economic Development Committee draft minutes dated April 3rd, 2023. Do you have anything to add to that? Any questions from council? All right. Resolution moved by Counselor Otten, second by Counselor Tamlin, that Township Mapleton Council receive for information the Economic Development Committee meetings Monday, April 3rd, 2023, and that council consider any recommendations contained therein. All in favor? It's carried. Next, going to 9.1. The resolution here moved by Counselor Otten, second by Counselor Tamlin. The Township of Mapleton Council received Building Department Report BD 2023-06 dated June 13, 2023 regarding May month end and year to date. Any questions, comments from council on this one? We'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have 9.2.1. This one is moved by Counselor Otten, second by Counselor Tamlin, that Township Mapleton Council received the Close to Home Department Report dated June 13, 2023 regarding compliance declaration, Ontario Health West, and that further that council authorized the mayor and CEO or director of finance to execute the declaration of compliance and any and all ancillary documents. Questions on this one? Helen's here. She's willing to answer. Okay. She doesn't want it to get up to the podium. Okay. If there's no questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Moving right along to 9.2.2. Moved by Counselor Otten, second by Counselor Tamlin, that Township Mapleton Council received Close to Home Report dated June 13, 2023 regarding the annual reconciliation report. And further that council authorized the mayor and clerk to execute the certification document pertaining to the annual reconciliation report and all ancillary documents. Again, Helen's waiting for all the questions you have. Any questions, comments? See nothing. Helen's getting off easy. All in favor? It's carried. Such great reports. That's why there's no questions. Everything's there for you. Moving to 9.3.1. Now there's going to be some discussion on this one, I'm sure. And this is moved by Counselor Otten, second by Counselor Tamlin. Economic Development Report ED 2023-05 dated June 13, 2023 regarding the 2023-2024 Community Handbook to receive for information. And I turn it over to Allie.
I don't have too much to add, other than the report. You can see the community handbook that is attached, so that's gone for a round of revisions already from staff and self-reviewing and some input from council that we received already before that revisions, or from committees, I guess, sorry. So it's really for council's review to see if there's any updates, changes, or anything that they would like to see in it before it goes to print. We're hoping to have all the revisions in at the end of the week so that we can, our consultant can get it back to us and we can go to print within the next month. And then we'll be sending it out through the Wellington advertiser to try and get it to as many households within Mapleton as we can. We do have a lot of different postal codes within our area. And then we will have it at the office at events, and then any businesses that would like to have the handbook as well.
Thank you, Allie. Great handbook. Love the color. Love the look of it. Questions? Councilor Otten.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. It looks fabulous. I love all the inclusion photos from the contest. Do you work with realtors, that whenever a house is sold and buys a house, that they automatically this as part of your moving income?
Through you, Mayor. That was actually discussed at our committee, is trying to give them out to local realtors that are in the area so that they can give it out. Just to make sure that it's a great resource for new people into the area. So hopefully the realtors will go along with that, and we'll drop some off if they're open to that idea.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Councilor Tamlin.
Yeah, just to add, what Councillor Ottens was saying, just how, just the presentation of it, and I think the kind of how many aspects of the community it covers is actually really wonderful. Encouraging people to get involved in what each community offers and really celebrates, I think, where we live. I think it's a great job.
Anything further? Great job, Ally and team. All in favor? It's carried. Moving on to item number 9.4.1. This is moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information finance report FIN 2023-13 dated June 13, 2023 regarding the final tax rates for 2023, and for that the associate tax rate bylaw be approved as provided. Mr. Morrison, anything to add to this?
Through you, your worship, no, this is pretty standard mandatory bylaw that we must pass in order to build the final property tax.
Thank you. Questions then to Mr. Morrison? Seeing no questions, all in favor? It's carried. Next one up is 9.4.2, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin. The Township Mapleton Council received finance report FIN 2023-14 dated June 13, 2023 regarding applications for tile loan form 6. And for the Township Mapleton Council approved the application for tile loan form 6 for the property located at East Part Lot 7, West Part Lot 8, Concession 6, Former Township Appeal in the amount of $50,000, provided that funds are available from the province. Questions on this from council? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. And next we have moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, that Township of Mapleton Council received finance report FIN 2022-15 regarding the 2022 year-end operating variances and surplus as information. And that one, council approved the allocation of $155,358 into the discretionary environmental reserve fund. And two, that council approved the balance of the multi-year surplus of $519,819 into the capital reserve. And further, that council approves the 2022 audited financial statements. Mr. Morrison, anything to add?
Through your worship, I'm here to answer any questions. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of stories, so if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. And questions from council, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The number that, through you to John, the number you identify as being difficult to explain, I agreed with, because I had saw that in the other auditing paperwork, and I'm like, how does this make sense? And then you explained it here, but are you able to just walk me or us through how that 4.6 turns into 150,000?
Through your worship, the simplest answer is that the current fund represents what's left over after everything else has been allocated to. So it's something where in accounting, we haven't figured out, what category it would fit in terms of your generally recognized accrual accounting. And that's what would be considered the surplus here. So I don't know if I'm not really saying that any better than I can at this moment. It's basically the recognition at the end of the day, or at the end of the 3 years, we have $675,000 where we haven't either expensed it or properly. Well, we've recognized revenue, we've recognized the expenses, and at the end of the day, when we're converting from one form of accounting to the other, you have an unallocated surplus that doesn't fit into any of these categories, and that's what the current form represents. is your traditional surplus that you would see. And we discuss every quarter as to what I think is going to be the surplus and deficit at the end of the year.
Clear as mud?
Yeah.
Other questions? I think we have this almost every year, Councilor Martin, that we, between the accountant and between finance director, they do two different types of accounting. We get two different sets of numbers. And I think Mr. Morrison's tried to explain it, every single year to us, but go ahead, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious if John has a recommendation on which, so he's got two, like the 155,000, the 519, which one of those should we reduce by the 26,000 for the Alma Optimus? I'm assuming the precise number going into the environmental reserve has a purpose on it, so maybe the capital reserve is more appropriate.
Through your worship, I would agree with that. The capital reserve is where you take the money.
Thank you. Other questions, comments on this? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Yeah. Yeah. Right, that is carried then. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. Be back 10. Okay, we'll get back up and going again. Move on to item 9.5.1. It's moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information fire report FR 2023-05, the communique. I can just get that door closed behind you as well, please. Chief?
So what we've done this time with the communique is change up a little bit. Heidi and I realized that we weren't getting enough content in there with the monthly thing, so we got March, April, May, and adds a few more things to our department that we've been doing. The regular training is noted there. The recruits are getting through their recruit training, so in another month or so after training and testing, we should have 6 more recruits up and running and ready to get on the trucks. A picture of the recruits is on the bottom right hand corner there at the Flinkert Farm, which we are hosting constantly. Unfortunately, we did lose a captain last month. It was very sudden, and it was a big void in our department. Andy was a very big mentor, very big member, always had some helpful tips for younger people, and he's on the fire department for 26 years, and unfortunately he'd succumbed to cancer. So we had a full reception at the fire hall and the service forum at the Moorfield Community Center. And so we note that he's going to be strongly missed by our department. The calls were not up any amount too much, so we're normal. The severity of the calls was up quite a bit. Like the picture on the front with the truck on the side is just to kind of an indication of what the calls were like last 3 months. And the fires were bigger, the accidents were more dramatic, and the medical calls were more needed for us, and when we didn't have the ambulance there. So at the bottom, I just want to make a note there. The Maranatha School, which is on John Street, they have every year now come to us and said we don't have to do our community service because we don't have that part of our school credit program. We'd like to come to your department and bring some scrub brushes and vacuums and brushes and go over all your vehicles, including the pickup truck, and scrub them right down, make them really nice. And so they did a really good job detailing the trucks, and when they leave, they're spotless, like very good. So we just want to thank them in there too for that work.
Thank you, Chief. And just on the note on the visitation and the funerals for Captain McDonald, the firefighters, Chief, and yourself and the firefighters did a tremendous job at the visitation, making the hall look wonderful, and of course the service itself. And I must commend the firefighters as well in Moorfield for their chicken barbecue that they had, and the amount of people that drove through, and the way you had that set up as well. I think it was last week, and amazing. The meal was great, by the way. I got a couple. I know I didn't go through your area. I went through Earl Campbell's, but Earl gave us a couple of good meals, so it was quite enjoyable. I kind of questioned whether to go through yours. I don't know what we got to get chicken out of that or not. But but the chicken barbecue is very good, and I know that the money raised for that was going to the McDonald's family. So very good for the fire department to do that in the Moorfield department. Questions, comments to the chief? Just pass on our thanks, Chief, for the to the members. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing we haven't touched on, we had the master fire plan suggested to us, and the company appointed to do that for us. They've been getting a lot of questions, a lot of feedback from it. They had between middle of February and end of March, questions day after day after day all the time, which is good. They've got the questions down a little bit more where there's not so many every day, but we're supposed to get a community risk assessment analysis first done, and they're close to getting that done. So that I thought that'd be done for tonight's council because it would take quite a bit of time. And so the risk assessment is quite in depth. And then after that, the fire master plan is quite in depth. So I've got little sprinklings of what might be in there. So it's going to be a really good, thorough document when it gets here.
Thank you, Chief, for the update on that, because I know we're looking forward to seeing that plan as well. Update to that plan. Any questions, comments? I'll call a question. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have item number 9.6.1, moved by Councillor Reed, seconded by Councillor Martin. That Township Mapleton Council received information planning report rezoning of ZBA 2022-09 S Bowman 6385 Yatton Side Road. And the council discuss and advise staff on their position related to the proposed uses. Staff will then prepare an amending bylaw. Turn that over to Linda.
Thank you, Mayor. So, this application was before council on October 11th. I think there's some new members on council since then, so I'll give a little bit of background. I did attach the public meeting report to this report for background information. But essentially what the application is for is the proposal of a new industrial building. That will be just over 5,500 square feet when you include the power room as well as the mezzanine. And at the time of the public meeting, there wasn't a use proposed at that point, just an industrial type building. So council wanted more information as well as staff on what the actual use is going to be in order to assess how the bylaw should be drafted. So the applicant has come back with that information, as you've seen in the package as well. Mr. Buseman explained it. So that was the first issue. The other issue that came before council at that public meeting was that they're proposing a new livestock facility on the property. That will be approximately 2,400 square feet with a second level that takes up almost the same amount of area for hay storage. And this facility is to house 4 horse stalls, and then a big area for manure storage, and then another large area for visiting people to place their horses and buggies in there when they're visiting. So the issue that was came up at that time was planning staff felt that that was rather large. This is a lot in a hamlet surrounded by other residential uses. It's only a 3-acre parcel. The MDS guidelines do not permit livestock facilities in hamlets, nor does the zoning bylaw. However, we do recognize that the Mennonite community does utilize horse and buggy as their main mode of transportation. And we have permitted through variances or zoning bylaws, a number of we call them horse and buggy sheds, basically. And the idea is that it's for them to park, place their horse and have their buggy for their, like a couple horses and a buggy or 2. So it's not generally a large structure, and we certainly have supported them in the past. I've done a number of them over my time at Mapleton, and they're always, 2 to 3 horses max. The third situation going on in the property is that they will also want to reconstruct a garden shed and have that as for personal storage. And then there's also an existing another structure on the property that is an actual buggy storage area. So in addition to this horse barn, they want to have this separate 1,700 square foot facility to store buggies. Again, this is for the residents on the property, which is a one family that lives there. So not sure of the need for that much space for these uses on this as part of their residential use. As part of the justification, we did ask the applicant to provide justification for the size of these buildings and the need for them. And so as part of the justification, Mr. Buseman did do an area search for barns that are generally in close proximity. And you'll see in my figure 3, I think that is, those are the barns that Mr. Buseman identified in the area and gave sizes for. So I gave it a little more context and looked up the zoning and what was actually on the property. And so there's some explanations, but you can see that Some of them are very old and existing. Some of them are associated with an active farm operation. They, you know, they're located on a 30-acre or an 18-acre parcel. And then there's other ones that are newer, but they are limited to, one is limited to 3 horses, one is limited to a horse and buggy barn that serves the household. So the idea there is that it's small scale. And it's truly just for the transportation for the residents on the property. So this report also, if you can scroll down a little bit more, you do see the floor plans for the various buildings, including the proposed barn that has a bit of a layout in there. So you can, I think it's there. No, that's the garden, just the storage shed. The workshop is there, the horse and buggy barn, but I do not see the barn. Maybe that's on the next one. Anyways, I have a hard copy here if anybody wants to look at it. So those are the issues with that one. Still struggling with the size of the barn, so I need council direction in terms of how council feels about it. And if they would like to see it made smaller, left as is, or put some parameters on it in the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. So the existing buggy shed, it's just for buggies right now, correct? Or could that, like it looks, okay, the picture to me looks quite large, but could it not be, it's just buggies, or is it buggies and horses? It could go in there.
The plans identified as buggy storage.
Okay. So open up the questions from council on this first one, because we're dealing with 2 here, 2 different parts of this parcel. And we need some direction to give the staff on this. Of course, we're talking about the garden shed, the buggy storage area, the size of the barn. And there's some good examples that were given in the yellow circles on page 196 as well. Councilor Martin?
There we go. Thank you. I have, I guess maybe just along the same lines as during Mr. Buseman's delegation. But for the planner, just for clarity for me. So we've been dealing with a lot or a fair amount of like the on-farm diversified use. This is not that. This is, as you indicated, in a hamlet. But how do those 2, site-specific zoning, in this case, to allow small manufacturing of small scale products of wood, metal, or plastic, how does that differ from the previous ones that maybe I'm more familiar with? And how do we, because of the vagueness of the application, how do we deal with, say, like the compatibility issues of surrounding, like if rural or hamlet, like traffic, I think Mr. Buseman's kind of addressed already, but what about noise, smell, that type of stuff? How do we, if we don't know what it's for, how do we address compatibility? I guess might be my question. What's the difference between those 2 zoning pieces?
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So that's part of the it is basically what's being proposed on this property would be the same as an on-farm diversified use. You've got your industry, you've got your residence, and you have a livestock facility. That's typical of an on-farm diversified scenario on a farm. And those uses are only allowed in the prime agricultural area on a farm, active farm parcel. So there's really not a compatibility issue at play here because the surrounding farms are so far away from this industrial use. So we don't have to worry about compatibility a whole lot. Now that we're in a hamlet and there's, you know, you're in close proximity to other residential uses as well as other industry uses as well. So we need to think about that. And the only way to deal with any kind of potential compatibility issues really is to know what's going on there. So if we do need to ask for some certain studies like a noise study or an odor study or anything, or ask for certain buffering or what have you, we'd have to know exactly what's going on. That would be my position on it.
Thank you. Because as you mentioned, this is a little bit different, being that it's how many acres? 3? Just over 3 acres of a property and 5,600 plus square feet of industrial, a barn of 2,350, buggy storage workshop of, buggy storage of 1,760, a workshop of 684. Then you have a shed of another 560. Lots going on. Sorry, go ahead.
If I can also add, I would like to also point out though, not to muddy the waters any more than they are, but this property does have an existing historical zoning currently on it to allow a manufacturing use, which is the manufacturing of farm livestock drinking bowls and uses accessory there too. So part of the reason why it's something we can look at is because they do have permission now to do some type of manufacturing on the property. So they're just asking to change that to allow this more intensive one.
Thank you for that clarification. Further questions from council members? Or comments? Councillor Tamlin.
Just to clarify, so there's kind of 2 separate things happening here of reuse of buildings and looking at more the household related items of the property as far as horse barns and buggy barns and other garden storage. And then there's this industrial part to it as well. So I agree with Councillor Martin there as far as really knowing what the outcome of what the business is going to be, to know those details, because there's lots of considerations involved with that. And I understand the concerns of the size of land, size of buildings for horses and managing livestock and all that as well. I understand the kind of the community aspect of having people over and the kind of the frequency of that and the numbers of people that visit during those times and how important that is as well. There's just seems to be a few more, quite a lot of unknowns within that as far as sizing and number of animals and all those aspects. So, yeah.
So you'd like more clarification?
More clarification, sorry.
Okay, gotcha. So council, can we talk about one, okay, we talked about industrial, we were looking for more clarification from council before this goes ahead. We want clarification on what they're going to be manufacturing. It's a little bit muddy in the waters right now. And so we need to have staff go and find that information out for us before we approve it. Can we also talk about the size of the barn on this property and whether council sees it as being appropriately sized or they want to see it changed? Councillor Ottens.
Yes, thank you. Through you. It does seem like this property's kind of trying to be both things, like a in-town in industry and also a farm with a barn I'm not sure why it's a separate horse barn and buggy barn, because the other ones around look like, I don't know, are they horse and buggy? All the others? So I don't know if we need to set some sort, is there a limit? So many acres, so many horses, or so many, so the size of the shed for that sort of thing too. So maybe we need to have that in our bylaws or standards or whatever, that it's only so many horses per household, I guess, that storage wise, 4 maybe and 2 buggies. I don't know. It seems logical for one home. Like a 2-car garage, I guess. 12 seems like a lot.
Other comments on the size of the barn? Councilor Reed.
Just from looking at the other examples, I would also agree with Counselor Ottens that it just seems oversized for the size of parcel that we're looking at.
So council, if I see this, then you would like staff to have further discussions on the barn size for reducing or the barn? If staff have that conversation? Reduction or elimination of that barn? That what I see from Council Martin?
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would probably be reluctant to establish a policy on it. I think that, you know, there's always a possibility of, say, multi-generational occupants in the home, right? You never know if, you know, what's good on one 3-acre parcel, maybe 2 buggies or 2 horses works good. The next one maybe 4, right? So to put a policy, I think we need to keep it where it can be tailored and customized for each individual applicant. And yeah, I think, you know, the suggestion that it's large at the moment, I think if we suggest to the applicant that it's too big, that they can come back with another suggestion that might still meet their needs, while reducing the footprint, would be something that I would
Okay, so
find
that,
palatable.
I wasn't looking, we weren't looking for a policy change. We're looking at this one parcel. And so right now, we're suggesting to staff to the size of the barn needs to be smaller and have that discussion. And we're also suggesting that the industry needs to be clarified and what what that's going to be, right? And of course, we also have that buggy storage already at 1,760 square feet. So, you know, was that enough to be the buggy storage and the horse barn? And that's the staff will have those discussions and bring this back. So, Linda, would that, is that enough information right now to go ahead with this? Is it what you need it?
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you.
So, Mr. Clerk, with council, is council looking to postpone this and bring it back after staff have done their discussions? So the resolution as is, the clerk has told me that we can pass it as is, and the clerk has the advice she needs to move forward with that one. Any questions or comments further? Nothing? Okay. All in favor then? Thank you. The 9.6.2, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that Township Mapleton Council received for information planning report entitled Rezoning ZBA 2022-12 L Bowman 6381 Yatton Side Road, and that council defers approval of the draft amending bylaw contained therein, which reflects the application as submitted, to allow further opportunity to upgrade and improve a final version of the bylaw, which should include controls such as the number of animal units, manure storage, and the floor area usage of the proposed building. Linda? Anything to add? 9.6.2.
So this one, I just want to add for this one, the barn is. Pardon? Yeah, it's on. Oh, here, got ya, okay. So this one, the barn is somewhat large as well, but it's existing. So, in this situation, it's more about restricting, I think, the animal units that go in there and what the rest of the barn is, just more clarification on what the rest of the barn will be used for. I didn't mention the last one, the barn, the floor area of the barn did show some other livestock. It did show a chicken coop as well. So I just want to make sure that we are very clear what these buildings will be used for. They are strictly for the keeping of horses. Again, it's a hamlet. So livestock, keeping of livestock is not a permitted use in a hamlet at all. So we have to be very clear in the bylaw what is allowed and what isn't. So with this one, the size of the barn, because it's existing, you know, that's fine. But I think we just need to make sure we know exactly how many horses are going to be kept in it and what else it'll be used for, because the lot is much smaller. The other thing I want to point out about this one is that it is tied to the or the lot line adjustment that was that received provisional approval back in the fall, because they took some land from this small parcel to give it to the adjacent parcel that we just talked about to improve the access. So because of that, they made this parcel smaller and there's some setback issues. So they do need this approved in order for the lot line adjustment to be finalized. So the other one does not, so we can work on that one, but this one we should try to have something back to council for final approval so that they can continue to move forward with their lot line adjustment.
Thank you. So questions on this application to Linda? Council want to discuss the controls such as number of animals, manure storage? Any comments or further questions? Any direction? Okay. So Linda, I think you have your council looking like they're go back and to have those discussions about the animals, manure storage and the floor area for the proposed building. Then I'll call the question for council. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you for coming tonight. Next one up is 9.6.3. Moved by Councilor Reed, second by Councilor Martin, that the Council of Township of Mapleton support consent application B 37/23 as presented for lands described as part lot 18 concession 1 and municipally known as 6362 and 6364 Yatton Side Road with the following conditions. That the owner satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. That payment be made of a fee of $355 for a letter of clearance. That a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township. That the applicant provides a municipal drain reapportionment or mutual agreement as determined by the drainage superintendent as per the applicable township fees and charges by law. That all components of the septic system be located on the retained parcel and cannot encroach onto the severed lands. Actual location of all septic system components must be identified on the reference plan to the satisfaction of the township. And further, council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the planning and land division committee at the county of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Any further comments, Linda? Nope. Okay. Questions or comments from council? And I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. The next consent application, 9.6.4, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed. That council of the Corporation of the Township of Mapleton support consent application B 42/23 as presented for land described as part lot 4 concession 7 with municipal address of 8599 concession 6 with the following conditions. That the owner satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. That payment be made of a fee of $355 for a letter of clearance. That a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township. That driveway access to the retained severed lands can be provided or upgraded to the satisfaction of the township. That zoning compliance be restricted. Compliance to restrict residential uses on the retained lands is addressed to the satisfaction of the township of Mapleton. That zoning compliance to address the barn sheds on the severed lands is addressed to the satisfaction of the township of Mapleton. That the applicant provides a municipal drain reapportionment of or mutual agreement as determined by the drainage superintendent as to the application applicable to the township fees and charges bylaws. And further, that council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the planning and land division committee at the county of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions and completion of the same. Questions? Comments? Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the planner. Your report indicates that the retained 50 acres are going to be consolidated as part of a larger farming operation. I'm not entirely familiar. So this 50 acres is going to be joined to the farm on which side? Or does it not mean that necessarily?
Through you, Mayor, it does not have to be adjoining lands, just they own other farm parcels in period.
So in a case like this, is there anything, I guess, through you to Linda again, is there anything to keep the applicants from, say, selling that 50 acres now to another farm? Or does it have to be, for this particular application, has to be consolidated into their other holdings and then it'd have to be severed off again? Or like, it feels a little like it might be getting piecemealed out, but I don't know if that's actually a thing or if it's allowed.
Through you, Mayor, so the surplus farm dwelling policies basically are in place to recognize where a farmer owns a number of farm parcels. You know, cash crop farmers have them all over. So when they sell off the house and keep the farm parcel, it's just held in the same ownership. It's not joined with any other farm parcels. It's just that they own other farm parcels. So that's the way the policy is written. They just have to demonstrate that they have other farm parcels. It could be in a different county. It doesn't even have to be in the county of Wellington, but that they have other farm parcels that they own and they don't want to continue to be a landlord, essentially, is the intent behind this policy.
Go ahead.
Or of acreage that defines a farm as part of that surplus farm dwelling, like if it'd just be another 50 acres over in Minto, or like, again, I'm not specific to this applicant, but this surplus farm dwelling thing is interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I agree with you. And yeah, they could own one other farm parcel that is 50 acres. There's no size. There's no size requirement for, as long as it's an operating farm, that you can demonstrate you are, you know, farming in some way. And also there's no size for the farm that's being severed, and there's no size for the farm that you are consolidating with.
Thank you. Further questions? Councilor Reed.
I'm just wondering for, through you, Mayor, to planning, for the severed 5.65 acres, you're noting on here that there's a barn that's going to be remaining that we weren't aware of, that it was indicated as it was a shed. Are we worried about the zoning that it will have once we've split it at all?
So what will happen is there is a condition to address this matter, and the condition is that the application is supposed to give the size of this building. It doesn't give it. And it indicate on the separate sketch, it says it's a shed, but clearly from the photo, you can see that it is a barn. So the condition that addresses it is the one that says that zoning compliance is obtained to address the barn / shed on the severed lands. So that's a very generic condition. They will have to come back to the township and come before council on that matter. If they want to keep it as is, but remove the opportunity for it to be used as a barn, because if it's a barn and it's there, they can fill it to the rafters with livestock. There's nothing to stop them unless we put a restriction in the zoning that says cannot house livestock. The problem with this building is it's huge, and historically, you know, we've had them removed because when they're that big, because there's no need for that. It's like an accessory building now on this property, right? So why do they need it to be that big? So until they come back with their application, they might be planning to remove it for all we know, and that would satisfy that condition. So it's an unknown at this point.
It is a very big shed. Other comments, questions? Go ahead, Councilor Tamlin.
Through you, Mayor, then over to Linda again. What is, I mean, there's a quite high frequency of this kind of application. What is the intent or benefit on the property owner to do this?
So through you, Mayor, the surplus farm dwelling policies were brought into the PPS, the provincial policy statement, in 2005. And at first, the county official plan did not allow them because we had concerns with them. But a lot of farmers wanted them because the intent is that cash crop farmers who own more than one farm don't want to have to deal with the houses that are left behind on these farms. They don't want to be landlords essentially. So they were tearing them down sometimes. And then that, you know, you lose a bit of your tax base, and it is a form of housing. There's lots of benefits to having these homes remain. So this policy was brought in to sort of help those farmers to continue farming and not have to worry about them. So you can sever the house off and just have your farm parcel.
Thank you. Further questions? Councilor Martin?
One last one. So typically a farm operates with, like as far as property taxes go, 1 acre of residential, right? And the rest is ag. In a case like this, if they're severing off the ag portion, does that mean it would be 5.65 acres of residential that we're paying property taxes on, or is it still 1 acre of residential and the rest to be considered ag? Do we know?
That's a Mr. Morrison question, I think.
I believe you're correct. The first acre is residential, and after that, it becomes agricultural.
Well, Ms. Morrison, being that they're severed off the portion of the house and a portion of that farm, would that whole property now become of the residential property and get taxed as a residential, because that part is not being farmed? That's now this residential severance.
The part that is severed off would be a separate property, and then again, the same rules would apply on that property.
So the 5.65 acres residential lot would be a residential lot and tax residential, and then the 50 acres that's farmed would be taxed as a farm.
Well, you have to have a farm application. And it
Mhm.
has to be approved. And if it's approved, then they would get the reduction in the
Correct.
property taxes. Otherwise, it would be at the residential rate.
So your 5.65 are, they're not gonna get approved as a farm. Anything further? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Next is 9.6.5. Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, the Township of Mapleton Council. Support consent application B 43/23 as presented on lands described as part lot 2, concession 7 with the following conditions. That the owner satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. That a payment be made of a fee of $355 for a letter of clearance. That a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township. That the applicant provides a municipal drain reapportionment or mutual agreement as determined by the drainage superintendent as per the applicable townships fees and charges by law. That driveway access to the retained severed lands can be provided or upgraded to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. And further, that council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the Planning and Land Division Committee at the County of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Questions on this one? Councilor Martin.
So this property is making my head spin. I think we've seen this property here. Is it 3 times or 4 times now? I'm just curious, like I'm having trouble. And maybe it's none of my business, but I'm having trouble keeping up on what the plan is. Does the planning department recall what the severances and mergers and lot line adjustments and whatever has happened on this property in the past? I know it's a lot to ask but this particular property has been in front of us, I think 3 times. And if you don't know, it's all good. It's more of a me problem than you.
The only one I can think of is under the same name was a surplus farm dwelling severance of a different parcel they own. So is it the name that, yeah, that's, this one, I haven't seen. This is the first.
Anything further? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Nine point six, sent application, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed. That council of the Township of Mapleton support consent application B 49/23 as presented on lands described as part lot 4, concession 12 with the following conditions. That the owner satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. That payment be made of a fee of $355 for a letter of clearance, that a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township, that a parkland dedication fee be paid as provided for in the Planning Act, RSO 1990, that driveway access be retained or to the retained severed lands can be provided or upgraded to the satisfaction of the township. And further, council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the Planning and Land Division Committee at the County of Wellington a letter of clearance of the conditions on completion of the same. Questions? Comments? Mr. Martin, you get finger in the button on that one? No? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Next up, 9.7.1. Moved by Councilor Reed, second by Councilor Martin, the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information Public Works Report PW 2023-09 dated June 13, 2023 regarding the proposed updated development design guidelines and standard drawings for the Township of Mapleton. Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you, Mayor Davison and council, and thanks to Carly Dixon from RJ Burnside for attending tonight. It's been a lengthy meeting for her, so just appreciate her staying. So these guidelines have been in the works for quite a while, sometime even before I started in last November, and we've hopefully come up with a working document. This is never a complete document. It's we'll be working on some of the stuff as we move forward. Last documents were about 15 years old. So it was time for an update, and quite a lengthy document. So hopefully the link worked for everybody. Some very interesting reading, fairly thick document. So, and then the summary, there's just a few things that Carly wanted to identify there in her letter. And I just moved them over into my council report, just about some curb and gutter and storm and sewer and sidewalk stuff for all the municipalities. Those are the kind of things that we deal with a lot is rain events and storms. We want to make sure these storm systems are in place, and also that we have the infrastructure there to keep the water on the road, and just to make sure, and also sidewalks to provide safe passage for the residents in the communities. And then so we just we're going to bring it back in July, just to give council a little bit more time to have a look at them if they have any questions, and then hopefully we approve them at that point, and we can move forward and provide these documents to the developers. It really helps in the planning process. It gives them guidelines. There's not a lot of back and forth. They know exactly what Mapleton is looking for in their development, and from the developers. There is a little bit of wiggle room in there and some things in certain circumstances. And then also one other thing is just to give the Director of Public Works a little bit of leeway there to make minor amendments without bringing them all back to council. And they would be approved by the engineer and myself and staff. Anything major would return to council. So if there's any questions, or if Harley would like to speak, I really appreciate her putting these together. All the departments had a hand in it. Planning looked at it. Building department looked at it. Very impressed with the document. Not a lot in there for the fire department. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, I think it's only, being that Carly sat here the entire time that you get the opportunity to say something, Carly. Welcome. It's nice to see you again.
So as through you, Mr. Mayor, as Jamie said, the document has been updated for about 15 years. So the intent of this document is really to give more guidance to developers and their engineers. So there's less back and forth. There's detailed drawings that they can take to put right on their drawings. And the main point is just to clarify minimum requirements, keep it consistent among all developments. And recently the ministry has downloaded some infrastructure approvals directly to the township. So there's forms in the document to deal with the township kind of taking over that jurisdiction from the Ministry of Environment for infrastructure like storm sewer, sanitary sewer, stormwater management systems. So I look forward to any questions you might have, or I know it is a very large document, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Jamie, and we can certainly answer those questions.
Thank you, Carly. Questions from council then to either Jamie or Carly? Councillor Ottens.
Given that there's some ministry guidelines that you're going with, so would the specifications in this document be province-wide consistent then? Is that the objective?
The ministry has just released fairly new guidelines to deal with this recent approval process, and those have been incorporated within the document, as well as checklist to make sure the township collects all the necessary information. So if the ministry ever audits the township, we have all those documents in place from the developments to make sure we're complying with those approvals.
Further questions? All good now? Thank you very much, Carly. Thank you, Jamie. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the next item, 9.8.1. Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed. That Mapleton Township Council receive for information recreation report REC 2023-04 dated June 13, 2023 regarding the before and after school program, Drayton Heights Public School for information. Amy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Rec Department is really excited that we've been approved again by the Ministry of Education to offer both the before and after school program for the upcoming school year. Typically, recreation programs are only allowed to offer programming for 3 hours a day. So we have to renew this extended hours agreement with the Ministry of Education annually. So we were happy to see that come back in and that we'll be able to proceed next year with the program as it sits this year. What's also exciting is we've opened enrollment and after school program is full. So when we submitted, we asked for an increase in numbers so that we would have the ability to open another classroom if it continues to grow and the need is there. So we would continue to be able to do that at Drayton Heights. The before school program is also looking good. It's just not as busy as the after school program. We also have been able to leave all of the agreements in place for Maryborough Public School. It just allows the opportunity in the future, say mid-year, for us to offer our programs without having to go through all of the processes to reapply. We have not had enough interest at this point to reopen that program, unfortunately. Hopefully down the road it will come, but it's just a simple way for everybody to work together to keep that open opportunity for us. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Amy. So questions to Amy about the program? Seeing none, Amy's off the hook. I'll call the question. All in favor? Moving on to item 10.5. Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin. That bylaws number 2023-036 down to 2023-040. Be hereby ready first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Questions, comments on any of these bylaws? All in favor? It's carried. We don't have any correspondence for council's direction. Correspondence for council's information. There are 9 items there that council peruse. And if you have any questions or comments or want to support any of those, please make it known. Not seeing or hearing anything from council, we'll move on. Item 13, any notices of motion? Item number 15. Other business. And now we're going to go to Jamie here. And Jamie, you have some good news to report to council on some money, I understand.
To you, Mayor Davidson. Yeah, we did receive one of our bigger tenders this year, our asphalt tender. A week and a half ago, I think it was, and we got some really good pricing, almost some pre-COVID pricing for a change. And yeah, our tenders come in and it's not always half, but it was very close to half of what we budgeted. There will be a little bit extra testing, some compaction testing and stuff. There'll be additional that, but it's not a great amount. Yeah, we did come in about just around half of what we budgeted this year. So, yeah, we had some good news. Like most of our projects this year have come in with really good pricing.
Good. And is there room to add on to what we're currently doing in the township? Or is it too late to add on any projects? It's still time if we want to add a different road, a different street.
Yep. To you, Mayor Davison, there's always that opportunity to add a street. Typically we would pick one in the similar area because of mobilization of what we're already doing. But yeah, there's always that opportunity to go back to the contractor and to add some streets. And generally, the general thought on that is while they're in the area, we will get very similar pricing.
Now, the reason I asked that, council, is Edward Street's getting done, and then there's a street between Edward and Wellington that goes right by the theater, and that road, which is economic development area for us, could use some work. So Spring Street, yeah, could use some work, and I know that Mr. Morgan and I had conversations about that, and Mr. Barron about whether that could be added in, and Mr. Morgan indicated that it probably could at a very low cost to the township. And I'm hoping that I think, Mr. Tamlin, you have a motion on that somewhere? Okay, thank you. I have a motion here by Councillor Tamlin and seconded by Councillor Reed, that Township Mapleton Council direct staff to for resurfacing of Spring Street from Wellington Street South to Edward Street in Drayton. And all this and add this to the 2023 roads construction program and amend the 2023 capital budget. So that's the motion that's on the floor to add that street. Any discussion on that from council? Councilor Martin?
Yeah, I think it's great that some of the other capital projects are coming in under budget or tenders. But I guess I would look to Director Morrison, just do you have an idea of where we're at overall? Sometimes we're under over here, but we're over on the other hand, right? And at the end of the year, we try to be close to even. Is there a capacity within? If not, I suppose it could come out of the capital reserves, right?
Through your worship, it's really premature in the year to be making a decision on where we're at overall. At this moment, I'm not sure that one project's going to be meaningfully recreate a significant deficit at all. Probably could be accommodated within the savings that have already been found within the one project that James is referring to.
So, sorry, Mr. Morgan, so just to give an idea, the value would be under what for this little street? What would be a value would be low?
Mayor Davison and council. So my estimate, everybody doesn't know the area, but Dales Drive to Dales Drive is approximately about 1 block in that range. And that was around to do all the manhole and catch basin adjustments. It'd be around $50,000 would be my estimate.
So
And
at the top end, at the top end.
We're hoping at the top end that section of road, depending on how many manholes, there's few there and valves. It was about $48,000 for that piece. And it's about a similar distance.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if that was going to be a question. I know that you were next. You have a follow-up at all or? Okay. Any further questions or comments on this motion? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And other business, I do have a proclamation here. Whereas the major trauma or injury is one of the principal causes of death for people in Canada, and all Wellington County residents have an equal right to education on and awareness of injury care, control, and prevention strategies. Whereas most injuries are predictable and preventable, and Parachute is Canada's national charity dedicated to reducing the devastating impact of preventable injuries for people on the road, at home, and at play by providing them with the necessary information and tools. And whereas the Township of Mapleton is committed to creating a safe environment, contributing to the safety and well-being of our children. And whereas hospitals, provincial agencies, and community organizations are committed to the crucial role in reducing injuries and deaths by promoting safe practices. And whereas National Injury Prevention Day raises awareness and promotes efforts to reduce injuries among children, the Township of Mapleton commends Safe Communities Wellington County and all involved in their endeavor to protect children from injury. Now therefore, I, Greg Davidson, Mayor of the Township of Mapleton, do hereby proclaim July 5th as National Injury Prevention Day. And that will be sent off to Safe Communities to be included. Anything further under other business? Sure, I don't have anything else. All right. Go to the next item then. Item confirmatory bylaw. So, sorry, we're going to a closed session here. That's it. Oh, we got nothing close, even better. I just want to surprise you there for a minute. So, yeah, it's a secret closed. So 17.1 then, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that bylaw number 2023-041 being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council of the corporation of Township of Mapleton be hereby read a first, second, and third time signed by the mayor and clerk, seal with a corporate seal. All those in favor? It's carried. We are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Long meeting. Thanks, everyone.